Psychiatrists. What made you realize that the person was not doing well? I can teach you guys about the flight to health that happens after someone survives a suicide attempt. You'll talk to them, and they have all these genuine plans to make their life better. They're enthusiastic and ready to get out of the hospital, to start their new life. They're going to quit their horrible job, love their family more, etc. etc. I'm always incredibly worried for these patients, because soon the depression slowly brings them down again. It's hard because convincing these people that they still need a lot of help is difficult, because they are completely genuine. Serious answer. I've worked both inpatient and outpatient. It truly is rewarding to see your care plan help someone. First time I meet them, I go through a whole history, physical, and review of systems and symptoms. Psych symptoms. I get people that genuinely start crying. Usually sleep pattern disturbance is a big indicator. Anhedonia is a hallmark sign of depression. It is a loss in pleasure in things that you used to enjoy, like gardening or video games. There are suicide warning signs, such as giving personal belongings away. There are so many signs for different illnesses, such as bipolar. I'll get a man who is spending his rent check or having risky and unsafe sex. It truly is interesting and rewarding. Very subjective. I really wish I had noticed my uncle giving his things away as a sign. I knew he was suffering, but it all made sense after he killed himself. I'm not angry at him that he did it. He was a quadriplegic and was getting on in years and didn't want his family burdened with his care. I'm angry at myself for not spending more time with him. Patient here. When I mentioned I dismantled every object in my house that had screws, she thought I might be just a tad bit manic. She was right. Well, it was pretty obvious that you had a screw loose somewhere. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I do have a master's in clinical psychology and worked in the mental health field for 10 years before I had to switch careers. Anytime somebody describes themselves as lazy, I almost immediately know they are probably experiencing anhedonia or some other mental health symptom. To a lot of people underestimate how bad their mental health is. People often think others have it worse and think fear somehow taken away from people who need their help. 3. They say they haven't had any energy lately. There's more, but I'm tired. There's more, but I'm tired. Would you say you haven't had any energy lately? Not a psychiatrist, but my close friend is an LCSW. She always tells me that marked improvement in a short time without any root cause is a huge red flag. For example, if a clinically depressed patient suddenly starts seeming incredibly happy for no reason, it's a sign that something is wrong. I knew my psychiatrist wasn't doing well when he spent the whole 15 minutes pacing the room, complaining how his ideas were not taken seriously by the other doctors at the hospital unit he headed. It was pretty surreal and hilarious. I just let him vent because he seemed to need it. I should have charged him. I was a patient. Before our first meeting, she asked me to write her an email summarizing the concerns I had that led me to seek help. Upon arriving, I asked if she'd read it yet and expressed concern that I was overreacting, making too much of very little, and wasting her time. I was even a bit embarrassed. She had read it, and I was informed that based upon my description of what led me there, a huge part of my problem was I'd slowly, over time, allowed myself to be convinced that everything I was enduring was normal, when in fact, it was highly abusive. In the emotional sense, that revelation was huge when I realized addressing what I needed to face and overcome was much larger than I'd ever imagined, and just how much doing what I needed to do was going to hurt, and that it was going to hurt for a long time. I say all that to say, if anyone is wondering if they really need help, or if they are just mentally overreacting, in either case, it certainly wouldn't hurt to seek out a professional you're comfortable with and get some feedback. This is the frog in the kettle problem with mental health. If we experience changes gradually over time, they're hard to actually notice. A lot of people wind up in therapists' offices saying, "Oh, this is really silly. I'm just being a baby. I don't belong here." And the therapist is like, "Hello. Red flags. You're describing daily suffering." Lots of mental health issues also fight back, where you become convinced the treatment is actually the problem. or is just going to cause more pain. So you avoid it. My own PTSD is trying to convince me an EMDR practitioner will think me silly, and I shouldn't bother to go at all. But my shrink insists. It's probably just classic pain aversion. Therapist, not psychiatrist. Oftentimes, a person will disclose that they're not doing well, so that's apparent up front. They can report low motivation, low mood, changes in weight, appetite or sleep patterns, level of socializing. But then there are unspoken signs. Appearance. For instance, do they present as though they've been practicing fairly consistent hygiene? Are they focused, preoccupied, tangential? Are they hostile, flat, enthusiastic, highly enthusiastic? One nonverbal tip-off I like to mention to people who see their friends and are suspicious of their state of mind too is smell edit, indicating they may not be bathing regularly. I had to tell my psychiatrist recently that I found an old friend in the cemetery visiting my dad who passed unexpectedly. He told me he can't go there because he would recognize too many names. The man has been with me over 10 years, has seen me through a lot, and is one of the reasons I'm still here. I always figured I needed plenty of help though. Not a psychiatrist but a therapist. When a person has a hard time understanding that their self-destructive behaviors are affecting themselves and their loved ones, to me, that's an indication that something else was going on. Trauma, addiction, etc. As a mainly inpatient psychiatrist, I already know, before I see them, that they aren't doing well just by nature of them being admitted. When I see folks in the emergency room, and I'm determining if they need admission in the first place, it depends. Not doing well because they are manic looks much different than not doing well because they are depressed versus not doing well because they are psychotic, etc. I'm a psychotherapist, not a psychiatrist. I notice a client getting worse if their sleep or eating habits change. Anhedonia, trouble with concentration focus when there wasn't an issue before, or they start to socially withdraw. Huge red flags if they start to give away personal items and all of a sudden feel happy. It takes a while to get severely depressed, etc., and it'll take a while to feel better. These huge red flags indicate suicidal thoughts and possible planning. I'm not a psych either, but as someone who has both been to many psychologists, therapists, and done thousands of hours of research into psychological phenomena and mental illnesses, there's a lot you will see in day-to-day just browsing social spaces such as Reddit where people will share rather freely, or Discord where people in smaller servers will trust others enough to talk. There's a lot of ways to not do well and there are signs for all of them. The biggest, of course, is the very thing which makes a disorder a marked impairment of functioning at the level others appear to. It'll be described in many different ways and manifest in many more. But the basis to tell if someone isn't doing well is that the kind of not doing well depends on in what way they find they're lacking in comparison to others, or how they believe they should be doing. If anyone is asking, how do other people do basic task, or similar. For example, I don't get how other people can smile genuinely, it's likely something is wrong either mentally, chronically, physically, or because of neglect. If you suspect you're mentally ill or have a disorder, but are having doubts, take this excerpt from Immune by Philip Detmer. It's about physical health, specifically infectious diseases, but mental illness is called mental illness for a reason, and it applies to health in general. How crucial health is becomes most apparent when it is missing. Health is really an abstract concept because it describes the absence of something, the absence of suffering and pain, the absence of limitations. If you are healthy, you feel normal, you feel right. As a patient, about halfway through my first session with a psychologist, she stopped me to ask if I was medicated and what I was prescribed. I was not, and the look of disbelief and tentative concern was both an amusing and damn, I really am broken moment, lol. P still not medicated, and I know I'm not broken. This is my hang up with psychologists. I was told to visit one when I was experiencing some mild anxiety, and after asking a handful of questions they prescribed me something I would have needed to take every day for the foreseeable future. It made me uncomfortable that someone who only spoke with me for 15 minutes felt comfortable enough to decide that I needed Lexapro for the rest of my life. I never took it and haven't experienced anxiety in years. I understand that there are people who benefit from these drugs, but the speed at which I was prescribed life-changing drugs was too fast for my comfort. Drug dealers are more cautious selling narcotics. It takes longer, that 15 minutes for sure. Not a psychiatrist, but at a general medicine checkup I had cooked up decently involved infectious disease workup for a patient's rash from which he claimed to have seen insects crawling. Then I noticed the Seroquel branded pen sticking out of his pocket, which didn't exactly jive with his telling me he had no medical history and wasn't taking any medications. I don't see how that means he was taking Seroquel. Right now I can see a pen from a restaurant I've never heard of, a bottle of hand sanitizer from a realtor who I've also never heard of, and I've literally never used a realtor, and a canvas bag from Marks and Spencer, which does not exist in this country, and also I don't know anyone who's been to the UK recently, but I've only had the bag for like a year. Stuff like this is meant as advertisement that works by people randomly handing out and sharing and lending and accidentally taking the items. It doesn't really associate the person with the item. I work in adolescent inpatient psych, not a psychiatrist, but I can always tell the ones that have real problems by how they act when they come in. If they are stressed, crying, or visibly upset in any way I can tell that they need help. It's the ones that come in smiling and comfortable that we have to question. We get a lot of kids who come in for a vacation and sadly make up symptoms. It's a sad time. But even in under a year I can pick out the kids who need and want help, and that's who I pour my energy into. I have no doubt that adolescents do make up symptoms and probably underestimate how unpleasant their inpatient experience will be. But can you imagine how miserable a teenager's home life must be for them to view inpatient as a vacation? I think even the teens who are exaggerating or completely lying about their symptoms are in desperate need of help. If you are so desperate for attention or escape from your family that you have lied your way into inpatient, then you do need help. Well, I'm only a PGY1 psychiatry resident, so I don't have a lot of experience yet. I don't want to get into specifics, but usually talking to the family to get collateral information plays a huge part in determining how serious a patient's risk of suicide is. I've talked to patients who seem totally okay, swear to God it was an accident, they forgot they took too many sleeping pills, blah blah blah, they have future oriented thought process and all the markers of being low risk, and then I talk to their family and it just goes down the toilet. Patients like will have a post-attempt glow where they didn't expect to survive and are suddenly thinking everything is okay, so you can't trust them too much beyond the normal things other people have mentioned. But if I talk to a patient's parents, partner and pick up a lot of cluster B personality traits, I really worry about that patient because of their lack of social support regardless of how well they think they are doing, because you just know they are going to be discharged into a toxic home life.